and welcome to How to Find Love in the Traumatic, a personal story by me, Acacia Thornton. And today's story begins with one of my earliest childhood memories. My parents were fighting at the front door of my childhood home. It was the final fight of their divorce. My mother yells, "I want the microwave." Dad yells back, "I want the dishes." So 3-year-old me yells, "Well, I want all the toys." That day marked a big change in my life. I didn't realize that when my mother was moving out, I would rarely see her again for the next 25 years. It was my father who raised me, my father who had full custody of me, and it was my father who abused me. With no second parent or alternative home to turn to, I had to adapt to living in an abusive household. Without my father, there'd be no roof over my head, no one to feed me. In time, my father remarried, and together they had my brother. More people in the house meant more victims for my father, and I couldn't confront him much because I risked further abuse. I had to learn to internalize it all. I had to hide my tears and adapt to his mood. My father was so afraid of my emotions, he even drugged me to suppress them. My father had raised me to believe that my instincts were wrong, that my intellect was an inconvenience, and that my emotions were deserving of punishment. I stayed local for college, but in time I moved across the country for law school, my first real chance at making a life for myself. But shortly after my move, I got a call at work. My father had taken his own life. The overwhelming pain, shame, and guilt of losing a family member to suicide sent my life into a spin. It was my fault, I thought. I should have seen something, done something. I could have been a better child. I was utterly shamed and devastated and brokenhearted. I'd cry uncontrollably for days at a time, and so I dropped out of law school. I struggled at work, and I started experiencing a visceral, innate desire to take my own life. Not because I wanted to die, but I felt compelled to follow in my father's footsteps, and I felt shame for losing control of my emotions. My brother and I had a phone conversation. We were not accustomed to talking about our emotions, but somehow we both admitted to one another we were each contemplating taking our lives. See, at the age of 19, my brother had it worse than me. He was the one who found our father's body. As isolated and alone as I felt, there was no one that could connect with him on that. But there was something we could connect on. We both knew what it felt like to survive watching a loved one take their life, the pain, the agony. And so we vowed to try to not do that to the other. It took me 6 years to start to see the light on the other side of my father's death. And in those 6 years, my mother found me on Facebook wanting to reconnect. She didn't know about my dad or his passing, but little by little we started talking. I also sought out romantic relationships. I have that human innate desire to feel loved, feel connected. But every time I would adapt myself to him and to the relationship, I just somehow always ended up getting hurt. And when I would get hurt one too many times, I would lash out. My roommate suggested that I might have anger management issues. "No," I yelled back. "That's impossible. This is how I feel. And I'm not hitting you." I thought by not hitting someone, I was showing love, self-control. But not hitting did not mean that I was not hurting. Words, tone, intent, they can be just as painful as physical abuse. A friend had heard of trauma-informed therapy. Now, I had been to therapy before, but never really with an intent to heal. And so I went. I also read a lot of self-help books, and I learned how to have an emotion in the moment. I began to feel lighter. A real turning point came when I learned of a story of a father and a son. See, this young boy, he too would get angry and frustrated, and so his father gave him a hammer and nails and said, "Son, when you feel yourself getting frustrated and overwhelmed, I want you to take this hammer and nails and hammer into the fence in the yard. You can use this as a way to get your emotions out, calm yourself. So the next time that boy got angry, he grabs that hammer and nail, stomps over to that fence, and he pounded those nails in. Over the years, there ended up being a lot of nails in that fence. The boy grows up, returns home, and thanks his father for giving him the tools to help him manage his childhood emotions. His father says, "Of course, son. Now, will you please go get those nails out of my fence?" So the boy takes the back of the hammer, and one by one, he begins removing each of the nails he had hammered in over the years. But as he does, he realizes something. Each nail, it was leaving a hole, a scar that could not be removed even after the anger had been. My pain? My pain was hammering nails into others. I was the one leaving holes. When I realized that I was responsible for making new victims in this world, I cried. I sobbed for weeks. And as I let go of all of that pain, I was able to invite love to fill those spaces. I got a job I love. I discovered my love of travel, and my relationship with my mother began to thrive. So when I found the perfect condo here in Las Vegas, I invited my mother to drive up from Arizona with me to share in the excitement of my first home buying experience. I had fallen in love with this condo in a high rise. I have a view of the Vegas Strip, the surrounding mountains. It's perfect. So there we are in the lobby on closing day, waiting for my agent to bring me my keys. And I watch a man walk in, carrying an assault rifle. Shots ring out as my mother and I begin running for our lives. And as we run, shots are louder and closer. We went and hid in the parking structure. I remember forcing my body to fit behind the rear wheel of a car, and my mom's up at the front wheel. Noises continue around us, and I realize that we're trapped. The parking structure was barred. The only way out was the way we just came in. I accepted that this was going to be the end of my life. But then I looked to my mother, and I realized that she was going to put herself between that gunman and me. I had intentions to do the same, but what became clear either way, one of us was going to watch the other be shot as the likely last thing we ever saw on this earth. My mother and I came out of that day physically unharmed, but mentally, emotionally, that was a different story. We both started experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. Our hands would shake. I lost my short-term memory, and I could not think straight. But eventually my mother had to return to her home in Arizona, leaving me in my new home, alone, a place where I no longer felt safe. All the emotions that I had suppressed in that day and the days that followed just bubbled up inside of me, and like a tidal wave took over. I plopped on my couch in an absolute stupor, and as I do, a thought popped into my head. Paraphrasing from a book I had read months earlier, May Cause Miracles by Gabrielle Bernstein. The line simply was, I can choose to see this differently. I can choose to see love instead. The thought was literally just random out of nowhere, but the second it came to my mind, everything shifted. Of course I can choose to see this differently. I was in survival mode during the shooting. I was in a form of survival mode after my father's death. But that's not everything I am right here, right now. I can choose to see this differently. But there was a second half to Bernstein's words. I can choose to see this differently. I can choose to see love instead. Love? No, dear conscious mind. A man just walked into my new home with the intent to kill everyone. His words. No, there's no love in that. But my mind retorts, you can choose to try. So I close my eyes and I relive that event, trying to see love. There I am as he walks in with that gun. I'm right there. Had he come in shooting, I'd have been the first one down. But wait, he didn't come in shooting. In fact, he walks right by me as if he doesn't see me. Huh. Next thing I see, the valet attendant is running up to the gunman asking him, "Are you okay?" An unarmed person asking a gunman, "Are you okay?" That is not only loving, that is incredibly brave. And that delay is what enabled my mother and I to put distance between us and that gun. Why are my mother and I running? Why are we hiding? We love our lives. We love our bodies. We don't want them harmed or taken. And why was it so painful knowing one of us might see the other shot? Because we had grown to love each other so much. At first, the idea of feeling love and gratitude for an event where people were harmed seemed wrong, inhumane even. I didn't choose to inherit that man's pain that day, but I do choose what I do with that pain. And I will not perpetuate it into others. I won't even perpetuate it within myself. My subconscious was right. I could choose to see it all differently. I could even choose to see love if I was willing to find it in the deepest, darkest moments of that scary day. Looking back at that story about the boy in the fence, I think there should be more to it. I imagine that in time, that boy inherits his father's home. And when he returns to his childhood house, he finds that it's aged, tattered. When he looks out to that fence he nailed into all those years, he finds that it's failing from years of weathering and abuse. But the boy, now a man, he walks over to that fence and he rubs his fingers over every one of those nail holes. And as he does, he reconnects with the pain he felt inside as he had created each hole. Mending this fence would take time, but he had to give it the love it deserved. So he removes the debris, props up the supports with fresh posts, and he now stains it so it's glowing and weather resistant. Now when the boy looks out at that fence, he smiles with gratitude for their years of memories together, and he cherishes a unique fence that could only be his. And like that boy, I don't have to accept the state of the experiences that I inherit. Looking back at that fight on my childhood doorstep, my parents were choosing to end a love that day. But I'm not that 3-year-old little girl anymore. I have learned a valuable lesson. Love conquers all. Love is why my brother and I made that promise to each other that saved us from the fate of our father. Love is why I was inspired and motivated to heal my relationship with myself and with others. And love is why I can have gratitude and appreciation for the people and the events in my life. Choosing love through it all has rarely been the easiest choice, but it has been worth it every time. I don't know what my future holds, but I do know as long as I am breathing, I have a choice, and I will always choose love. Thank you.